Ann Kaminkow, and I'm the Global CEO of Geometry. And welcome to Commerce Reimagined. It's our Geometry series highlighting change makers, visionaries, and the people who are showing us the way to reimagining commerce in today's very complex world. So for our very first speaker to our series, I would like to welcome Miri Rodriguez. She is an award-winning storyteller, a creative journalist at Microsoft. I met her through being a renowned speaker, keynote speaker. I call her a kick-ass keynoter and international thought leader in brand storytelling, personal branding, and youth entrepreneurship. And I think internships perhaps as well. Her previous clients have included Adobe, Discover, Walmart, and McKesson. She's also now the best-selling author of her new book, Brand Storytelling, Put Customers at the Heart of Your Brand Story. And today I have the honor to discuss this topic of brand storytelling, brand empathy, and the next wave of where this goes for businesses now, especially in the backdrop of what we're all experiencing right now. Welcome, Miri.
Thank you so much, Beth Ann, and thank you so much for the introduction. It's wonderful to be here. Thank you for having me. It's been an honor, really, to participate in this interview and to answer some questions. So I'm excited to be here.
Well, we have to start with the congratulations for your new book being such a huge success. I think it's #1 on the media communications category.
It is.
And it's sold out, I think, on Amazon right now. So if you haven't gotten one yet, you better get in there and get your name on the list for when they come back in stock. I was one of the first to get the book because you introduced it at WPP Commerce in Miami. We're calling it # the last conference of 2020.
Wow.
Hopefully it won't be. Hopefully we'll see.
I hope not. The first and not the last, hopefully.
Exactly. So my question for you, though, to kick this off is what compelled you to now put your ideas and your thinking into a book?
Yeah, actually, it wasn't me. I was in London at the time, and I was giving one of the talks about empathy. And it was a topic that wasn't readily available to people as a notion of a soft skill that we should hone into to do business with. And a publisher was there, and they came up to me and said, you need to put this in a book. You need to put this in writing for many people to read about it. And I immediately didn't think of the idea. I was like, no, I don't think that I don't have enough content for this, And so I didn't say yes immediately, but she really pressed and she really believed in it. And she really believed that the world needed to hear this. And here we are, a couple of years later, and so many people are honing into this soft skill, into this way of connecting in a time like this that nobody foresaw. So it was very timely. I think that's why people are hungry for the book and for the content. It really is around the notion of doing commerce, doing business, treating our customers with empathy, no longer just thinking of them. Customer centricity truly is being empathetic to customers.
Well, I can relate to that, and I also feel like we believe the book needed to be written. So thank you for that too. And I it's always interesting when you talk about soft skills, because the soft skills can actually be quite hard. Yeah. So sometimes having more of a how-to manual around that, it becomes critically important. So what we found most relevant for our clients is, and when we think about it now in this current climate, so we're all trying to figure out how we become most effective and valuable to our clients right now. This notion of brand story hero and putting your customers at the heart of brand story. Yeah. Could you tell us a little bit more about, like, from a non-obvious trend standpoint, what you're seeing right now in terms of good examples of customer centricity and what's at the heart of your book and how it's showing up in today's environment?
Absolutely, yeah. I did a 3-month plus, almost 4-month research around non-obvious trends that show up in themes that we're seeing throughout the commerce, the market, throughout social media, through the behaviors of brands and behaviors of consumers as well. And the ideas that came up from there. So this is a concept by Rohit Bhagrava, who actually came to Microsoft. I didn't meet him there, but I did see his talk, and I did further research about his model. And so I used this model to create these ideas and these concepts. And what came up was a few really telling ideas around commerce. So the first thing is that the newer generations, the millennials and Gen Zs and further, are actually thinking more of brands not only as humans but as friends. So they want to befriend the brand. They want to. It's an extension of themselves. If they choose to buy a product, they're not just choosing the product; they're choosing the brand itself. And so brands have to show up with a voice. They have to show up with a stance in society. They have to show up with a purpose beyond their product. And if they don't have one, it'll be really hard for these newer generations to connect with them with the way they want to. That's the first thing. The second one, it's around the idea that the customer, the consumers, they want to win. They want to feel like they're not being sold to anymore. They know that we're selling them as a brand, but they don't want to feel like we're selling them. And so that idea really comes around, especially in a moment like this. I've had brands ask, hey, is there space for an ad right now? Should we advertise at a moment like this? And the answer is yes. In a sense, there is space for that, but it has to be down back to the empathy factor. And that's where the idea of putting the customer first, a center in the brand story, in the brand mission is important. For us, for example, at Microsoft, we reimagined, if you will, our whole brand story, our mission. We went from a PC on every desk and every home to empowering every person and organization on the planet. And though both are truly empowering to the world, I mean, a PC on every desk and every home empowered the planet, really actually rewriting the mission and putting the customer, every person and every organization on the planet to achieve more, to empower them. It really set us aside and put us as almost a psychic of what I call the Robin to Batman effect, the psychic of our own story, and made the customer the hero. That really forces a rewrite and the blueprint of how we do business. And it's done it so far for us. So.
Over the last few weeks, have you seen, I'll repeat that, over the last few weeks, have you seen any examples of any brands that you've been like, wow, that just struck that right tone, or that's exactly what's at the heart of what I'm trying to help people recognize?
Yeah. I actually want to mention Corona. The brand Corona has actually said nothing. The last time they tweeted, I believe it was March 13th or 11th. I can't remember that. I was watching what they were doing, and it was really interesting because their hashtag, I believe, is live fully or something like that. It's around living fully. And I thought, wow, how intelligent, how smart of a brand is the fact that they have not said anything. They've been really empathetic to what's going on and chosen to say nothing. And I found it so interesting that I went to the supermarket and there was not a lot of Corona left. So people are actually buying the product. Mm-hmm. And so it's top of mind, even though they haven't done anything. I think that's a great example. Brands that are pivoting as well, their services and their goods to tune into what's going on. We've seen a lot hotels in different parts of the world, especially in New York, we're opening their doors right now to the medical staff who has to stay there. So these really empathetic ideas around how we can pivot our own services to deliver something today to people that need it, that will be long remembered. Customers are watching. This is a historic moment, and so it is okay to go off brand, and they should, I believe, to really win in the market, because what they do today will be remembered positively or negatively.
I love that, not doing something is actually action. Yes. It is doing something for your brand and for the community. And that's a great point. And then the product is selling because of that. They're being rewarded for that strong choice. So that's an interesting way of calling that out. So at Geometry, a lot of our approach is what we, human-centric, putting people forward and doing everything we can to dial up the insight and grabbing hold of the data in unique ways to really understand what motivates people and what makes them buy, what would resonate and what's happening in that cultural context around them. And we also often use the language, or we hear clients use the language when you're trying to move from consumers or customers and talk in terms of either people or even humans. And the funny thing, though, about using language like humans is I also hear on the other side of that, well, we're all human. So when you're using it as more of like an adjective or a descriptor, what does it actually mean to be human? And, to put a human at the core of the brand story. So being more human in your mind and in your writing and work, what does that mean? And what's that role of empathy to get us there?
I have to say, I really love geometry for that, and I love it because what you're doing is actually practicing empathy on a daily basis. There are 3 levels of empathy. I found out I was not empathetic myself when I started to do this work, and I was really shocked because I thought I was, but I wasn't. I actually had to take a test, the Clifton Strengths test, that kind of tells you like what your strengths are and not your strengths. And I was number, I believe, 33 down on empathy out of 35. So I was like, oh no, I don't have it. Like, what do I do? And so I actually quickly learned that it is a soft skill, and there's 3 levels of it that you can practice. And so what you're doing is you're practicing cognitive empathy by calling people humans. You are reminding yourselves right now, whoever's watching this, there's a human behind that screen. And I may not know you, but just because I can recognize that you're human, my empathy level rises when I think there could be something going on. There's a statistic about there's always something happening in the background. We're human. There's a human condition. Somebody's dealing with an illness. Even today, I mean, we're thinking about just the impact at every level that we're all having during this pandemic. So while when we move away from customers or clients or consumers, we humanize the people that we're serving, and the ethics come in truly around marketing. We remember to be ethical. We remember the heart of who they are and why and what do they need. And we are more prone to deliver any ad, any communication, any content in a way that is centered to their approach, to where they're feeling, to their environment. So instead of asking them to come to us, we go to them with our approach. And that is really the design thinking approach that I share in my book, is thinking about the 5 steps. It starts with empathy, and then you define your customer base from that lens. You define the characters, how they're going to play. You take time to craft the content, not just create content that you think will land, or even content that may seem that is right now hip, or the language that we think it's a trend. You allow yourself to go off trend if you have to for your own audience, and you ideate, you prototype, you fail fast. You allow yourself a little bit of vulnerability in the process, and it's the way that we're not used to, but it's a really great approach to fail fast, learn quickly, do it again, recycle it, see what works. And when it does work, it is remarkable what happens because people understand the authenticity behind it.
It's interesting that you talk about even personally getting more attuned to your own levels of empathy and thinking about empathy as a skill, and a skill that's developed. I feel sometimes like I was hardwired for empathy, and
Really?
I've always thought of myself as empathetic. One thing I learned in my own empathy work was actually not only could it be a strength, but it could actually be a weakness.
Yes.
So that was an interesting insight for me to have, that sometimes, especially as a CEO or a business person, there are times where you have to recognize where it's maybe clouding your ability to also have more objective thinking sometimes when that's necessary in a different context. So it is interesting to explore all dimensions of empathy, how to bring it into the work in a productive way.
You're right, and I thank you for sharing that. That's wonderful. My son, my oldest son, is highly empathetic. That's actually his number 1 on Clifton Strengths. And you're right. One of the things that he tends to do is internalize a lot of the emotions. He feels for other people so strongly, and so you're actually talking about the second level of empathy. It's a little deeper. It's emotional empathy. And so the first one, cognitive, is they are human. We recognize their humanity. The second one is we are human. And when you do that and actually get a little deeper than that to the last one, which is compassionate empathy. So you go emotional and compassionate. When you get to the compassionate level, you have to take time to really consider your own emotions and how they may be blocking or how they may be obstructing your path. And so taking time on a daily basis to journal, to think about, to release those emotions and actually acknowledge them, not necessarily doing anything with them, but actually acknowledging that they exist. It's a good exercise for empaths like you.
So this isn't on our questions that we prepared in advance, but just to go deeper on this, because it's such a fascinating topic, I'm just curious, when you think about in a brand storytelling standpoint, or as a communicator, as a business leader, like we just were talking about too, when you're talking to a mass audience, like I'm talking to a global audience at scale, and many of our brands are too. People could be at all different stages, or have many different emotions that they're bringing to something. How do you navigate that? How does that work?
Yeah, and that's where what I call the universal truth. So there are themes around the brand story that will resonate with everyone at every level, even through lived experiences, through our own intersectionalities that we each bring to the table. I'll give the example of Microsoft as a brand. When we switched our story to empower every person and organization on the planet, empowering became our universal truth. In essence, what that means is all of us in the room, all of us that are hearing this, all of us in the world can feel empowerment or not. We know what the lack of empowerment is, and I don't have to explain that to anyone. So that feeling, that emotion, it's a universal truth. So when brands speak to an emotion that we can all attest to, everyone in the room, everyone in their target audience will come together and understand that feeling from different angles. Of course, we consume content differently. Think of people watching a movie at a theater. We're all watching the same movie. We're all consuming it differently, but we're feeling the same feelings. If there's a happy ending, we all get happy. If it's a sad ending, we all get sad. So there's universal feelings that are all human at the core, and that's where the stories are successful in landing, where we can actually attest to those feelings.
Really, really strong advice. So let's move into the mode of sort of measurement of this and
Sure.
benchmarks that kind of lead to the metrics and the measurement. You've mentioned the emotion, the reaction, the lasting action, but how can brands leverage these metrics in a way that's also effective for seeing storytelling moving the needle for them?
Yeah, absolutely. I do want to caution to everyone listening around storytelling, for brand storytelling specifically, if you're thinking about this as a way to connect with your customers, it is for the long haul. You're not going to get an immediate, ROI to the bottom line, if you will, because it is an emotional path. It is, in essence, you changing the blueprint of how you show up as a brand. We know the brand is the feeling you give to your customers. So that to create that feeling for the long haul, it's going to take a little while. But you can benchmark immediate results when you're prototyping stories. And that's why I suggest the model for prototype, because it's quick, it's low effort, and you can see if you're doing well along the path. You're kind of directing yourself through it. And I've tested it myself, and so it works. And so benchmarking really is simple. You can attach it to marketing KPIs, because truly they align to those. In reach and engagement, for example, you will get reach and engagement when your story lands well. People will organically share it. I mean, I can't say that enough and stress that enough. It has a content of emotion, and we share things that we tend to remember, and we feel. So just to remind everyone, storytelling, if you create content in story form, it has the power of being 22 times more memorable than any other content you will ever share. So it will be memorable if you make it emotional, if you test it in the market, and if it lands well. And with that, it will also be emotional, and people will innately share that. Just like we share songs, just like we share poetry, it is in us to share something that we enjoy, that we connect with. So reach and engagement will be your first two. I actually share an entire chapter on benchmarking storytelling, with the idea that yes, you can align it to your typical marketing and communications KPIs, with the idea again that this is for the long haul, and that you're going to essentially change. I call it cultural activation. You're going to culturally activate your brand differently if you head that way.
So now let's talk a little bit about the role of technology. So
Yes.
there's not anything that's not underpinned today by technology or enabled in new ways. You're at Microsoft. It's playing a bigger role directly in storytelling, and it's
Yes.
making us more effective in communications even right now during COVID-19. Zoom as a new media for telling our stories, right? Getting ourselves out there and creating a level of intimacy that we probably didn't have in a lot of our relationships before. So bringing that into the sense of short-term, long-term trends that we're seeing, I also think what we've just been through, or what we're going through right now, is shortening the cycle. I mean, the adoption cycle of some of the things that we thought were maybe further out are coming in closer. So a bit from a futurist view, what do you see on the horizon, and maybe even a bit pushing us still longer term in terms of what might be out there 5 years from now, or
Yeah. Thanks for asking. I get excited, and to be honest, a little scared just to think about 5 years from now what that will look like, because predictions abound, especially around AI. AI is the strongest, I think, technology that is taking over in many areas, just because of the sheer power that it has to think by itself. So the idea that artificial intelligence, once it's created, it can just start making those connections. It can start creating those patterns, and really thinking for itself. And what that means is we are, they're autonomous. They're autonomous. And so I actually dedicated a whole chapter. The last chapter in my book is around the future of storytelling. I really believe immersive storytelling will be the next step. And I talk about that because we're thinking about storytelling in one level. And we're thinking about storytelling as content or that we can deliver in certain formats or certain channels. The reality is stories, and with technologies that are coming in, will enable us to immerse ourselves differently, 3D and even 4D, in the commerce space for consumers. Think of it that way, this way. We can use our own phones to, before I even go to the store, if there will be a store after this, there's so many questions around things that, in the entire idea of business and how it's done. But if I want to go to the pharmacy, to the store, if I carry a device that tracks me, for example, the store will probably have a technology that knows I came in, that knows I'm an existing customer, that knows what I typically buy. And before I get to the aisle, it may even have someone stocking it, or even a robot stocking it before I even get there, to make sure it's there when I get there. The kind of ads that I'll be looking at will be customized to me. Hey, Miri typically buys hair products. Once she gets to the store, something will pop up and say, hey, Miri, you get 20% off shampoo. And so it's now a customized and immersive experience where I'm integrating technology and I'm talking to machines, if you will, to get that experience. So I really believe that immersive technology, 360 video was kind of like the beginning of that. We're getting into HoloLens now. We're getting into smart buildings and smart rooms and smart houses. We have Alexa, and there's jokes about kids talking to Alexa because it's part of their day. They just have this assistant next to them, and that has always existed. And so it's really interesting to see how in the next 5 years this will come to be. Predictions around AI is that they will be 5 billion, not million, billion times smarter than us in the next 5 years. So that's yet to be seen. But truly what we're seeing with COVID is a lot of things that we thought were essential are not. A lot of things that we can do with technology, we can, and we're proving it right now. So that will absolutely enable the next step into technology for the next 5 years.
So I have a quick piggyback on top of that one.
Okay.
The first is we've been using the old adage of necessity is the mother of invention. Yeah. And I think, that's to your point. First of all, a lot of this technology existed. We just didn't necessarily have the immediate value for it in our lives. And so we weren't paying attention, or it wasn't in the forefront the way now brands have been able to push it out there or adopt it very quickly to meet a real need. Right. The other thing that I was curious about is where do you see the human being in all of that? I know I spent a lot of time with Alibaba and some of the other commerce marketplaces and platforms that have been moving faster with artificial intelligence, especially because they're in nations that are huge, dealing with populations that are huge. And so to be able to do something at scale, artificial intelligence has really helped them to mimic a lot of what we were talking about earlier in terms of humanity and the things that we think of as being real human touch. So what's the balance, and especially when it comes to storytelling, between artificial intelligence and machine learning and the technologies and then the human being? Where do you see the roles playing out?
I see an incredible piece of our humanity going back to creativity, going back to ingenuity, and going back to the empathy level. Think, for example, about machines such as cars. Cars were undoubtedly built by men and for men, and in the essence that when you even test them in crash dummies, these are men looking crash dummies. The frames are men, and when women that are typically smaller in frame will get into the wheel, we have to push our seat all the way up, and we have to get up close to the wheel because we don't have the space that we need. And so when you think about the actual impact of that, when you think about a biased machine that has been built with biases, the impact of that could be that the woman, because she's so far near the wheel, if she crashes, the airbag may not have time to deploy on time. So we will probably hit our head and something could happen. And that's the impact of biased technology. And the reality is we are biased as humans. So where I see AI combined with storytelling, which drives empathy in our cycle with commerce, is men and women who are coding these machines, who are creating, if you will, because we're creators. We're innovating with this technology. We're going back to the empathy level of where does this machine sit? What is it going to go do? If it goes into education, how does it enable intersectionality and people from different educational levels? It's not a one size fits all. So where the technology goes, it has the potential to be less biased if we become more empathetic to humanity as a whole. And so I think the opportunity here for all of us in the next digital transformation. So I think COVID absolutely helped a lot of companies push through the digital transformation that they probably weren't taking that step yet, and now they are. And the next phase of that will be machines will take over a whole lot of operational logistical work, and we get to sit behind it. And if you code empathy, if you will, in it, a human heart, a human approach, because they are thinking if they're on their own once we create them. So if we insert that idea, I've actually read articles around machines helping us even be more empathetic. Machines asking questions to say, "Hey, Miri, did you remember to call your mom today?" So if we do that, they will do that for us, and they will keep us human. The irony.
So last question. We think about the long term, obviously, as you said too, and we know it takes a long time to build the equity around brands, especially when it's about purpose-driven storytelling.
Yes.
We work with Unilever, and they've been on this from the inception of a lot of their brands. It's just built into the brand, and we're seeing now that those companies have been able to draw from that equity. You know, they're able to more authentically, if you will, put communications out there in a time like this in a way that does resonate with people. Are there any favorite examples that you have in terms of brands that you've been following for years that have just been so consistent about how they show up?
So I do love Marriott. Marriott is one of the brands that I enjoy, not just because it's I travel a lot and I use a lot of different brands, so it's not my favorite that I always choose. But I do love how they've enabled technology and storytelling to really connect with their customers. As soon as before you get to the lobby, they know you've checked in. They'll send you a text and say, "Hey, is there anything you need? Can we get you extra water, extra towels?" So they do take an extra step approach to connecting with you through technology, which I love. It doesn't seem intrusive. It was surprising the first time they sent me a text, and I was like, "Oh, this is nice," but it's really, really kind. And what I love that they're doing now is they're taking time, for example, to send emails, consistent emails to their customers, people that they have in their database, and reminding us what it was to travel with them and that we'll travel again. And so they're using this idea of like, hey, this is temporary, shedding a little hope to the idea that we're going to get out there again, and it's going to get back to, going back to hotels and enjoying some kind of normalcy. And I love that. I love that because they're not selling anything, and they can't sell anything right now. But what they're selling and what they're really showing at the same time is the experience. They're reminding you that they've created experiences and that you have them again. So I think they've done that really, really well. I love NASA just in general. NASA, I think, has done a great job. And of course, they don't really sell things, but they do. I think they sell science, and I think they sell technology in the way that they have an entire team dedicated called NASA Social to stories. And what they do is they talk to, they have the astronauts go in and talk about their own personal stories. So I really love that they had astronauts talk to us about being confined, being quarantined, because they spend time in the International Space Station for years and months. And so the empathy there is around, hey, we get it. We've been there. We've had to train to be in confined spaces, and it's okay. We survived. You're going to survive again. So I love that. I love that because people tune into those messages of like, this is a brand that typically is so out there. They go to the moon, they do all these things, but we forget what it is to feel like to go to the moon. You're going to have to be in a space for this long. And now we're feeling this. And so that feeling again comes through, and we remember what it is. We're looking at them differently. They look human. The astronauts look human. So I think they're doing a great job. And Nat Geo, National Geographic, I think is doing a terrific job. They've always done a great job when it comes to their storytelling through photography, especially on Instagram. They're doing a great job in reminding us what the world is like today. Each photographer goes out there to tell their own story of where they were in the moment. It just, again, Earth is beautiful. It's a beautiful place, and it's a beautiful place we get to enjoy. So once again, it's the nostalgia that we're getting and the reminder that this too shall pass. And I think that's important.
They're great three themes that I think all brands could figure out how do they intersect with their own business and their own storytelling. Miri Rodriguez, you are just a special charm for all of us. I like to think of you as sort of a conductor of a symphony of storytellers.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much. I really, I am passionate about this because I truly believe in it. And I have to say, it's changed my life. I've had to work through this myself. As I said, I'm not empathetic personally, so I've become more, and I'm on that trend of becoming an empath, and it has changed my life in the way that I do business, the way that I do relationships, and the way that I connect with people. And it's absolutely something that we should truly hone into.
So for everybody out there that is interested in more information on brand storytelling, this is the perfect time to purchase your book once it comes back on.
Yeah.
But please go look out for brand storytelling, put customers
Please.
at the heart of your brand story. And you can find her on LinkedIn at Miri Rodriguez. You can find me on LinkedIn at Beth Ann Kaminkow, again, Global CEO of Geometry. And we look forward to more of these conversations, both with you, Miri, and with the audience on Reimagining Commerce. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.